ever making anything more lax than the default. And if you change something and you can't remember what you changed, you can also go back to the reset and it resets it back to default, and you can then have it based on that. So some of the things that all of these will enforce are like ActiveX filtering, pop-up blockers, smart screen filters. Now that's what Edge calls it, a smart screen filter. There's filtering in Mozilla and in Chrome as well, and called smart screen. That's kind of the technology that's used with them. And then in private browsing, anybody ever use in private browsing? So you can browse in private, and then cookies don't get saved, and then you're not getting, for instance, who's ever went to Amazon and looked at file cabinets or something like that, and then every page that you visit after that advertises file cabinets to you. All right, so that's because they put some cookies on your machine that shows, it's a tracking history. So if you do in private browsing, you're not subjected to the tracking. Does that mean that you can do in private and then go and commit a crime on the internet and the feds can't find you? No, they can still track your IP address, so it's not a way to totally hide yourself from criminal activity, but it will allow you to keep some of that information that's typically put on from different websites like cookies and such from tracking you. The reason why we do security at all is obviously to protect our data. So we have lots of data that we store, some people more than others, and businesses obviously more than individuals, but still our data is important to us, whether it's our family pictures or it's our financial data at our bank. It's very important, and we want to keep it safe, and we want to keep it, which is our confidentiality. We want to keep the integrity, which means that it doesn't change from end to end. If I'm sending a check, paying a bill of $30, I don't want it to somehow be manipulated in the middle and it becomes $300. We want the integrity to stay there. And then availability. We want our data available to us at all hours. Whenever we need it, we want it there. So CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability is the important cornerstones. So we use different techniques, and this again is logical security. It's software that protects our machines. So we use like firewalls, and the firewalls will be at our local machine. Also our routers have firewalls that are in them. So it filters out that traffic and keeps other computers from connecting to our computer if they're not supposed to. Biometrics is another form. Does anybody have any biometrics on any of their devices? Lewis, what kind of biometric?
I have a fingerprint scanner on my laptop.
Okay, I do too. So iPhone uses a fingerprint reader. Some of the Android phones, you can do facial scanning, facial recognition. That's biometric. Or retinal. They do retinal scanning too in the Android phones. So those are all biometrics. That's something you are, right? Either your fingerprint, your retinal scanning, your facial recognition. Smart cards and key fobs are two other types of validation that we can use. A smart card can be used for like entering a building or getting access to a computer if it has a smart card reader on it. And then key fobs also are usually, well, you may have a key fob for your car when you walk up to your car and it validates that you can get into it. Also, some key fobs are like USB devices that you plug into your computer and then you get access through a browser to a particular website, like a federal website, because that key fob has a key that's on it. When you plug it into your machine, you can then get access. So those three types will prevent unauthorized physical access to a computer. Always backing up our data is of major importance because things can happen, such as ransomware, and other types of malicious software that will keep you from your data. So backing up that data and having a good backup is an important part of security. File and folder permissions and encryptions. Encryption can be used to prevent unauthorized users from viewing some of your data as well. So I don't know if you've ever looked at file permissions, but we can go to different files on our computer and highlight them and go to properties. And you can see the advanced sharing permissions. This one's not shared, so it's not going to show me. Let's see. instead of secure. Here you can encrypt, so I could take this file and I could encrypt the contents to secure that data. So if anybody got access to my USB, they could not read that without the password. Now it's just going to encrypt it with a password, not real deep, or real secure, but more secure than it just being open, right? So applying those permissions and applying encryption is another layer. And when we build security, we build it in layers. For instance, we have that firewall layer, we have our password layers, we have our biometric layers, and then the permissioning layers are added in there as well. Some operating systems and devices will come with an encryption ability called Windows BitLocker. There's also some other softwares that you can use to encrypt your entire hard drive. So you have to have a password or some type of validation device in order to even get into that hard drive. When I worked for a financial institution, any laptop that left the bank had to have BitLocker or Dell Data Protection on it. It had to be totally encrypted, so if somebody stole that, they could never get into any of the information. So that's enacted at the hardware level, although it uses software and some hardware to do it. Once our devices obviously don't last forever. Sometimes it'd be nice if they did because they cost a lot. But they don't last forever, so we will, get rid of devices and have to replace them with newer devices because they get obsolete or their hardware fails, whatever may be the case. And in that case, hard drives then need to be erased so that data doesn't go out to a landfill somewhere that somebody could actually get used to it or get access to it. So when we dispose of data, we always have to wipe that data off of the hard drives. We do that, again, using some software. We can also beat the drive to death, and that will remove it beyond all recognition to be able to get into it. So depends on what you want to do. Do you want those hard drives to be able to be reused somewhere? Then you want to use software we use called DBAN, Derek's Boot and Nuke, and it erases those magnetic hard drives beyond recognition. It does several wipes on there and just removes all the data off. And that's for magnetic devices that we can use that. Now we're going to solid state hard drives. That type of wiping does not work anymore. Neither does the degaussing, which is a magnetic process where you expose that hard drive to high levels of magnetism in it, because the data is written on there through a magnetic process. So if you apply the magnetism to the hard drive, then it removes the data from the hard drive, erases it. Doesn't work with solid state drives. So as we go toward solid state drives, we have to use some different software to wipe those devices. So that's a new and upcoming thing. We haven't transitioned fully to those and don't run into those, so we don't talk about it as much in this particular chapter. But once that data is wiped off that hard drive, then it can either be destroyed, recycled, whatever, or it can be used in another machine for somebody else to get usage out of it for the life of it. The last, well, I don't know if it's the last. The next one we're going to talk about is some other software that we use for hardening our machines. We always want to have anti-malware programs on our machines. Some anti-malware, antivirus protection is McAfee, Symantec, Kaspersky, although Kaspersky's kind of, they've had a bad rap lately, so I'm not sure I would use that one. Sophos is a good one. You want to have that antivirus protection. Again, that's another layer. You may have 2 or 3 antiviruses. So Windows 10 now comes with a stock antivirus program. Anybody know what it's called?
Windows Defender?
Windows Defender, yeah. So that comes stock, but that's not the only one you want to have on there. So it's good. It's the first layer of protection. You want to layer those protections. So you want to put at least another antivirus, anti-malware program on there, if not 3. It can protect you against adware, spyware, viruses, worms, any types of malware. When you're installing other programs as well, you want to make sure that they're signed programs by the maker, so that will ensure that they are an authentic copy of that program. So if it's a Microsoft program, you want to make sure it's a signed copy of a Microsoft program. That way you're sure that it hasn't been corrupted by viruses or bundled with any other type of malware. A lot of people go out on the internet, they want to find Microsoft Office for free, right? And there's a lot of people that advertise Microsoft Office for free. You may get Microsoft Office, but it will have some other things bundled in with it that then likely will destroy your machine. If a computer becomes infected, there are steps that we follow, but of course we always in an organization need to defer to our IT policies on how that works in that organization. You don't want to overstep any of your boundaries within your organization and do things that you're not supposed to do. But the first and foremost, you always want to remove that infected computer off of the network. What's the easiest way to get a wired computer off the network fast?
Network cable.
Yep.
Unplug it.
Unplug that network cable that's going in the back. That immediately takes it off. If you have a laptop and you're connected over the Wi-Fi, what's the fastest way to get it off the network fast?
Get it off the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, so disable your Wi-Fi, and that way you're not connecting to the network. So that's the quickest way. And at that point, you don't want to just shut it down, because sometimes you remove what's happening on that computer that then your IT department needs to go in and assess what happened during the infection. So it might wipe out some of those files that they would need for looking into that attack. So you always want to follow that incident response policy, and every company has one. It's a necessity in organizations. The first thing is usually to notify IT personnel. Then they'll start from there. If that's not your job, they'll start from there. If it is your job as an IT technician, you'll want to save log files to removable media so you can research that later, and then turn off that computer. Home users should always update their antivirus programs, any type of anti-malware program, so they're sure they have the latest virus definitions, that they can clean that computer, and then you'll boot that computer with a scan disk or a USB that has that media on it, so you can clean off, run that antivirus and remove any lurking critters, is what I like to call them, any lurking critters. Safe mode is also another option that you should try. So you can scan it in the normal mode, always scan it in safe mode as well, because in safe mode, only certain things load and run. So you may be able to find some other viruses that tend to hide in normal mode. After that's completely clean, you want to delete all of your system restore points, because you don't want to restore back to an infected state, right? So you wipe out all those system restore points, and then you create a new restore point that is the clean restore point. So all of our computers on a network must be either part of a domain or a work group. We have a domain here, it's 214security.com. If you don't have a centralized server, you'll want to have those networked computers in a work group. Before computers can share resources, they have to share that domain name and that work group name, so you have to have those all added to the domain or the work group. You can map drives when you're on a network, so there may be a drive on that server and you map it to your local machine and it just looks like another folder that's on your machine. And we're pretty familiar with that here at Ivy Tech. And then you determine sharing permissions. And this is where the principle of least privilege comes in. You only want to give people access to what they absolutely have to have to do their job. You don't want to give them any more. So it's called the principle of least privilege, and that's the way that permissions should always be enacted on a domain or a network, or even on a home group for that matter, if you do a home group in your house. There are different controls on folders: read, change, and full control. So read would just be, users can just view it, right? They can look at it. For change, then they can change some of the things on in those folders. They can change the data, they can delete some folders, and then full control means that they can do all of that, plus they can change permissions on that. So principle of least privilege, only give them what they have to have. Our commonality of security techniques include encrypting. If we are dealing with a wireless LAN where we're connecting over Wi-Fi, we want to be sure that our SSID, which is the name of our Wi-Fi, so what's the name of your Wi-Fi at home, Bonnie?
Oh,
When you go to connect, does it come up with a name? Do you have it broadcasting?
I don't know.
Mine just says like, I think mine's Chastine's. Louis, what's yours?
Blade Master.
Blade Master. So sometimes we can get really creative with our SSIDs, and that's how our network broadcasts itself.
Well,
It's
mine's
really-
not broadcasting.
Yeah, so I was going to say, it's better if your network actually isn't broadcasting. So if people come into your realm there where your network is available, they don't see that and then try to connect. That makes your network more vulnerable. Now, does it protect your network entirely? No, it's just another layer of protection, right? Some devices can actually see networks that aren't broadcasting. You can set them to look. So it's not the strongest form of defense. In those wireless local area networks, though, the strongest security that we